Chapter 15. In Houston, Lukowski, James T., had been given the news. There was a thing growing inside of him. Sooner or later, it was going to pop out of him like a birthday surprise, eating its way free. And when it was born, he would die. So long, Jim. Nice knowing you. Simple. He had been numb with the shock, and when that had worn off, the fear had claimed him. He was going to die. Dr. Driner and Dr. Rain were sorry, but there was nothing they could do. "Can't you kill it? Cut it out?" "Not without killing you," Driner said. "It's a very tenacious life form." He was calm, as if he were discussing the weather. Easy for him. He didn't have a monster growing in his belly. Oh, God! The two doctors stood next to where Jim sat on the bed, both of them safely wrapped in clean suits. An armed guard stood just behind them, also suited. He had a handgun holstered on his right hip. "So, I'm like an incubation chamber for this thing?" It was not a question. "Yes, listen, if it's any consolation, your wife will get the full insurance. She'll be taken care of." "Oh, right. That makes me feel a whole lot better." The sarcasm made the words bitter. Now that he knew what it was, he was sure he could feel the thing moving inside him, getting ready to rip his guts out. No. "Hey," he said, putting his hands over his belly. He suddenly stood up next to the bed, made himself sway a little. The doctors showed concern. "Lukowski, are you all right? James?" "Telemetry, what's going on?" They weren't worried about him, he realized, but about their pet creature inside him. Damn them. Something's happening." He began to jerk, as if losing muscular control. Yeah, something was happening all right, but not what they thought. He snatched his arm away from Rain, slapping the man's face in the process. He danced in a little half circle, shivering. Rain backed away. "Damn it! Come on, get the guard over here." "Give us a hand," Rain ordered. Good. The guard, a burly man, wore his sidearm in a snatch-proof rig, an old-style denim thumb-brake strap keeping it safe in the holster. Jim knew about them. He'd done a tour in the street guard. They'd used the same kind of gear. If it had been a military hand ID unit, he wouldn't have had a chance. But it wasn't. The guard was wearing gloves, and the more sophisticated rig needed a bare hand for a print to register. The guard grabbed him by the shoulders, and Jim let himself be pushed towards the bed, where they could trigger the presser field to hold him in place. I'm okay. It's gone now." He pretended to relax. "Thanks for the help," he said to the guard. He smiled. When the guard smiled back from behind his clear faceplate, Jim reached down, rotated the thumb brake on the safety, popped the crow tab, and pulled the gun from the holster. The weapon was a 4x4mm soft slugger with a 100-round magazine. The safety was in the trigger. It only had to be pulled. Jim swirled the pistol in his hand, pointed it at the guard, and fired. 5 rounds of hypervelocity soft slugs tore into the man. The bullets were designed to mushroom on impact, to expend all of their energy on a human target without passing through the body. The entrance holes were small. The bullets would punch through Class 3 body armor, but the missiles then expanded and dug craters the size of a baby's fist through vital organs. The guard fell. He wasn't going to be getting back up on his own. Driner and Hine turned to run, but Jim gave them 2 rounds each between the shoulder blades, and they tumbled. A siren hooted, over and over. Jim turned to the mirrored wall and let go a dozen shots. The plastic chipped and shattered, and he threw himself at it, falling through into a room with techs and more guards digging for weapons. Jim came up, spraying the room. Men screamed and fell. He paused long enough to dig out a spare magazine from the belt of a fallen guard, jamming it into the waistband of his hospital shorts. He ran. Guards spilled into the hall. Jim shot them. He found a keycard on a dead one next to the exit, waved the card at the scanner, and flattened himself against the wall as the door slid open. 2 guards came through, guns out. Jim emptied the last 20 shots in his soft slugger into them. They fell, like their legs had disappeared. He ejected the empty magazine, snapped in the fresh one, ran. He made it to the building exit, shot 3 unarmed people who tried to stop him. They didn't matter. Outside, it was hot, damp. The air had an oily stink, but that didn't matter either. He was free. He ran into the street. Behind him, somebody yelled. He spun, fired a couple of shots, missed. The soft slugs spattered on the sinstone walls like drops of dark paint dropped from a great height. A hovercar fanned to a drag stop, almost hitting him. Jim ran to the car, pointed the weapon at the woman driving. "Out!" he screamed. The woman obeyed, terror in her eyes. He waved her away. She was a civilian, no reason to shoot her. He leapt into the car, pulled the drag stop up, shoved the leaners on full. The car blew dust up, fanned away. A round of hardball spanged against the car's body. A second tore through the canopy, but missed him by half a metre. Air whistled through the exit hole. The car picked up speed. He had time to notice that the seats were vat-grown leather, a rich brown colour, with the right smell. The control panel was real wood, burled and polished smooth. They wouldn't catch him now. At the complex's gate, a guard stepped out in front of the onrushing car, waving frantically for it to stop. She didn't have time to get her gun out. Jim ran the woman down. The car's front collision plate dented from the impact. The car slowed a little, but kept going. The gate was open. The expressway entrance was ahead. It led through the city to the suburbs, where he and Mary lived before this happened, where Mary was. A police fanner rumbled into view behind him, and he merged with the expressway traffic. The fanner flashed its lights. Vehicles moved aside to allow it room. Jim put his car into full speed mode. The whistling from the hole in the canopy went up in pitch, grew louder. The car was a hot machine, expensive, built for speed as well as looks, and quickly passed the speed limit. The fanner was built to chase such cars, however. It gained on him. The fanner would be armoured. The soft slugs wouldn't stop it. They cranked up their hailer. "Stop your vehicle immediately! Houston Traffic Police!" Jim laughed. What were they going to do? Give him a ticket? Take away his license? The fanner pulled up level with him, on his right. They were alone on the expressway now, the other traffic having dropped back or moved off to surface streets. Jim looked at the 2 cops. In a second, they would pull ahead of him and try to block him. He had nothing to lose. He shoved the control stick to the right. The car turned, slammed into the fanner. The traffic unit was larger, but he had inertia on his side. They veered towards the guardrail. The fanner's driver tried to compensate, but too late. His engine screamed with power as he unleashed it, but the fanner dug into the rail, hit a support post, spun. The impact slammed the fanner back into Jim's stolen car. Now both vehicles spun. Jim shoved his control forward, opened the drive fans to full again, slewed, almost lost it, and flipped, but powered out of the spin. Wobbled, then the gyros caught and held the car steady. Not so lucky the cops. The fanner caught a rear blade on the rail, shattered the tough black plastic fan. Shards of jet sprayed. The loss of lift dropped the rear of the fanner. The friction flipped the vehicle like a man spins a coin on a table. The fanner smacked into the rail again, bounced, tumbled, and went over the side. It fell 20 meters and went through the roof of a fast food shop. Jim kept going. He reached the resiplex where Mary was, killed the fans, got out and went into the building, shot the guard who rose to stop him at the elevators. The door to their unit opened. Mary's eyes went wide. "Jim, they said you were dead." "Not yet." She reached out and they embraced, hugged. Down the hall somebody yelled, "There he is!" Of course, they would know where he lived. "Goodbye, Mary. I just wanted to say that." He twisted away from her, sprayed the hall. The slugs flattened on the walls as he waved the gun back and forth, ricocheted away, screaming almost like some tortured animal might. "Ah!" somebody said as they caught one. "I have to go now, Mary. I love you." It all felt unreal to him. Mary stood there, hands pressed to her face, as he turned and sprinted away. He headed for the roof. Somebody would have a flyer there he could steal. Feet pounded behind him as he reached the roof. He found a flyer with a card in the drive control, smashed the door open, got in, lifted. Bullets chewed at the flyer, but he was off. Where would he go? It didn't matter. He pointed the nose at the sun, shoved the power level full on, flew away. They'd never catch him. He was free. 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 But there was something large and ugly suddenly sitting in the seat next to him, something dark and monstrous, and his stomach started to hurt. Likowski, James T., lying on the presser bed. His stomach hurt. Tears flowed from the outer corners of his eyes, ran down his face, pooled in his ears. The two doctors stood over him in their clean suits, peering through protective faceplates, eyebrows raised. There was a guard behind them, but he wore no weapon. There was no need, and they would never have let anyone with a gun in here. Never. All in his mind, Jim knew. A fantasy of escape that could not be. The pain in his stomach increased, a sharp burning, as if a hot knife were being driven into him. "Ah!" An amplified voice said, "Vital signs in flux, doctors. Heart rate up, blood pressure rising, myotonis pushing the limit." Jim glanced at his own body. His bare flesh bulged suddenly, just under his sternum. The pain was incredible. It was time. Driner reached out and touched the bulge on the patient's solar plexus. The skin immediately flattened. "Amazing," he said. Rain said, "Get in here with the catch net." The man on the table screamed, a primal noise that set Rain's teeth on edge. Lord, what a sound. "Hurry up with that damned net." Rain turned back towards the man on the table. "Won't the presser field hold it?" Driner asked. "I doubt it. Insufficient mass. Where the hell is the net?" The amplified voice said, "Nobody's suited up to take it in there. It'll be a minute." "This shouldn't be happening yet," Driner said. "Our term estimates were obviously wrong," Rain finished. "If somebody doesn't come through the lock in 30 seconds with that catch net, I will fire the entire fucking staff," he yelled. "None of you will ever work in this field again." To Driner, Rain said, "This specimen is invaluable. Nothing can be allowed to happen to it. Nothing." He leaned over the struggling man. The patient screamed again. His flesh erupted, burst outward, and the alien's blind, toothed head came forth. "Good God," Driner said, leaning away from it. Rain, fascinated, leaned closer. "Why, look at it. Fascinating." "Here's the net," somebody yelled. Rain turned to look. "Fuck," Driner said. "Look out." Hine twisted back towards the patient, too slowly. The thing shot out of the dying man impossibly fast, like a thick, armoured, blood-slick arrow. It hit Hine's clean suit, bit the osmotic material, and chewed through the heavy substance as if it were tissue paper. Rain, horrified, stared at the thing. "Bring the net!" Driner yelled. "Hurry!" Now Rain sought to bat at the thing, but its head was already inside the protective suit. He felt it reach his skin. "Ah! It's biting me! Get it off!" Driner reached for the thing's tail, but his gloved hand slipped on the gore that coated it. It moved away from his touch, pulling more of itself into Rain's suit. "Help! Help me! Ah! Ah!" The tech with the catch net grabbed Rain, but the doctor twisted away from him, in panic. In his fear, he tried to run from what was attacking him. The inner hatch had not cycled closed. Rain ran for it. "Louis, no! You'll breach isolation!" Rain was beyond hearing, beyond caring. The only thing that mattered was that this thing was eating into him, burning like molten metal. "Stop him!" Driner yelled. The tech reached for Rain, missed, got in Driner's way. They tangled, fell. Driner scrambled up, in time to see Rain clear the inner lock, lunge for the outer lock's control. "Freeze the door controls!" Driner yelled. Too late. Rain pounded on the emergency override. The outer door slid wide. He staggered out into the hall. Isolation was blown. Driner ran after his boss, yelling for him to stop. "Kill it! Kill it!" Rain screamed. The security guards pulled their guns. "No!" Driner yelled. "Don't shoot it!" The guard looked confused. "Shoot him in the head," Driner commanded. Now the guards really looked puzzled. "Do it!" The guards didn't move. Rain started to run. He might damage the specimen. Driner moved. He grabbed a gun from the nearest guard, who didn't try to stop him, raised the weapon. Driner had been a champion pistol shot while he was in college. Could have gone to the Olympics if he'd worked at it harder. He hadn't fired a gun in years, but the old reflexes were still there. Rain was only 10 meters away. Driner put the red dot square on the middle of the fleeing man's clean suit helmet, took a deep breath, let part of it out, held it, and squeezed the trigger carefully so as not to pull his aim off. At 12 meters now, and it was an easy shot. Rain's head shattered. He fell. Driner lowered the weapon. "Sorry, Louis," he said, "but you were the one who said how valuable the alien was. We can't chance hurting it." The guards and techs stared at him. "Now," he said, "bring the catch net." He still had the gun. They all moved, very fast. And in the end, they didn't even need the net. Apparently the thing liked where it was. Good. That made it even easier.